Everyone online says you need to scale with a course. And I say, sell the damn service. I'm Emily Williams, award-winning consultant and productized offer expert since 2014. And I'm here to help you work less, make more, and stop custom building your burnout. Each week, we talk strategy, structure, and the real stories behind sustainable service businesses. You know, from service providers who like doing service work, who want to stay in service work, but also just make more money. If you're ready for all that yapping, then let's dive in. So Sold Out Services opens in 2 days, and here's everything you need to know about the program, the done with you work. What does the container actually look like? How does it function? What are the wins that you can expect to get? And if it's right for you. We have our webinar in 2 days. And so first of all, if you are not signed up for that, you should definitely go to soldoutservices.com/webinar and save your free seat. Because on March 12th, 2026 at noon Central Standard Time, we are going to be chatting. And I'm going to be talking all about the authority anchor and how to identify it, why it matters, what it impacts, and how it is the first domino in the I'm ready to productize my service timeline that sets the stage for success. And so we're going to talk about how to craft yours and what it is and all of the components of the authority anchor and ultimately how you can use that to scale your one-to-one service business. That's happening on March 12th. At the same time, that same day, the doors to Sold Out Services opens. And of course, we have a launch bonus, and you're going to be hearing all about that over the next couple of days. So definitely be paying attention because I brought on a collaborator for this launch bonus, and we have a bonus episode. That's right. We're doing 3 episodes next week, which is bananas. But one of those episodes is with this collaborator, and we're talking about the bonus and the structure and why it matters and why it's going to be super, super impactful for you all inside of Sold Out Services. And I cannot wait for you to hear that. So this is kind of just your warming up, really doing a deep dive into what is this program, right? And what does it look like? And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode was not just to, kind of talk to you about what's inside and how it works, but also to be very, very clear about how my container and the done with you aspect of it is astronomically different than any other program you might have done in the past. I've talked about this before on Instagram and on Threads, but I don't think I've spent enough time here really, really giving the clarification that done with you does not innately mean group program. And I want to call that out before I even dive into anything about SOS, because I want to make sure that our brains are on the same wavelength. And if we are still thinking that done with you means group program, and let's call it for what it is, because there are providers out there who say that their thing, their container, their program, whatever is done with you. And the only with you element is when they show up once a month on the group call. That is not what is happening inside Sold Out Services. In fact, there is no group call where we show up and I'm teaching and that's where you're having to take in information. And if you miss that call, then you feel like you're missing something important and critical in the container at all. Okay. So we're going to start actually with the support and the structure of the actual container. You have been following along and you've been listening, and you can read on the sales page and in my emails and in the webinar in 2 days about the ecosystem of why the work inside SOS matters. And we're going to definitely touch on that a little bit today too. But I really want to start with logistics, and I want to be very clear about what it is and what it isn't, so you can understand what you're getting into. Okay. So let's start with support. All in all, Sold Out Services at the time of this recording, at the current iteration that it is in, is a 12-month done with you program. So what that means is that over the course of 12 months, you and I work asynchronously together. That's the done with you element, right? We work asynchronously together to install 7 pillars of productization. And I'm going to get into what that means in a second. But the actual structure and logistics is you come inside and you fill out your onboarding form, right? And behind the scenes, just so you're aware, when you fill out that onboarding form, I and my team is creating a custom client profile for you so that we can understand everything about where you're at right now, where your business is at right now, what the sticking points are, where you want to go, what those client goals and revenue goals look like, so that we can understand in our brains and in my strategic brain, what is the best path forward for you to reach the goals that you're saying you want to reach. Oftentimes, we come into programs and containers and even work with one on one, done for you service providers, and we have a goal in mind and we have an expectation of what we need to do to get that goal and to make it happen. And more often than not, what I'm seeing in this container is that those things are out of alignment. And you come ready to say, here's what I think I need to do in order to get that goal. And I want to know, where do you want to be and how do you want it to feel and look, and how your business needs to run in order for you to get that goal. And then we design the proper path, right? So you fill out your onboarding form, I create your client profile. From there, you start to dive into a little bit of the IP, the method, right? That might be shared with you in the course of a video. Every single video inside of the program is less than 15 minutes long. There's only one video that's longer than that, and it is the welcome walking you through how this all works video. Okay. Every other tangible asset is less than 15 minutes. So they're super quick and you can even speed them up. There are no slides that I'm covering, so you can listen, and not have to look at the screen. Okay. You're going to digest the material, whether that be in a video or an Airtable template and base that's loaded with tables and formulas and workflows for you to help get the work done inside of this container, or a worksheet. So there's custom Google Doc worksheets for you to actually interact with and fill out and submit. Okay. So it's one of those three ways that you're going to be taking in the IP and the method. But what's really cool is because we're installing 7 pillars of productization, each pillar is divided out on its own, and every single pillar has the IP, the method that you take in and you learn. Most pillars also have an embedded second brain, a custom AI tool that I've built. This is not ChatGPT, it is not Claude, that I've built and embedded inside of the program for you to basically run your first draft of idea by. In order for us to not just get clarity quicker and move through decisions faster, that's definitely part of it, but for you to make sure that you're utilizing my brain where it matters most, I want you, when you submit your work ultimately for review, to be submitting like a pretty solid first draft. Doesn't need to be perfect, and it doesn't, just nowhere near final. But I want you to be able to not just interact with the IP, but also interact with Second Brain. So you can have some conversations, you bounce ideas off of, you get a structure, you get questions asked like I would ask you in a one-on-one call. It is trained exactly for that specific lesson and takeaway. There is not one all-encompassing bot. It is targeted toward each pillar. So it is highly trained on what I would ask if you supply a certain piece of information. If you ask a certain question, what would I say back? So it gets you thinking, it gets you brainstorming, it gets you interacting with the IP, right? So then you go into your actual submission for that particular pillar. And this looks like filling out a form via Airtable. It's embedded inside your portal. And you're going to share a link to your Google Doc, your a Loom video walking through the Airtable base where you created, you looked at your capacity and it's giving you some data and you want help analyzing it, right? You've crafted your authority anchor and you want feedback. You've started to outline scope and deliverables for the productized container and you want feedback, right? You want that next layer of, okay, here's where I've taken it on my own. Now, what can Emily add to this conversation and this particular piece? All right. So you submit that. Those are your milestone, your pillar pieces of work that you're submitting. And depending on what pillar you're submitting, you're going to hear from me an in-depth review. Sometimes within the same business week, sometimes it's 2 weeks. depending on the depth of what you're submitting. Some of the submissions are quick and I can provide some copy rewrites and we can kind of go back and forth pretty rapidly and come to a good conclusion and move on and add on the next layer. And some of them I want to be thinking about and I might need to sketch an idea out for you or do a little bit of research about a tech tool that you're wanting to use. And so that takes time. But you're going to get that feedback regardless on every single pillar that you submit. Now, even though you have the support of the bots and the IP and you are able to submit, you also have the opportunity 24/7 to ask a question and submit a support ticket. So what that means is you fill out a form and you give me guidance on what question that you're actually asking. What is the topic? What have you tried? Why is this holding you back? What piece do you really need to understand here? What outcome are you hoping to get? And I get that in my inbox as soon as you submit it. Support tickets right now are being responded to within 72 business hours by me, right? I review every single piece of work. I review every single question. And so those are meant for you to get really targeted support so that you can move forward, typically same week, right? I have a quick question here. Hey, can you look at this? I'm confused about that. What do you think about X, right? And use it as a very quick response. If you're finding that you are wanting to chalk in-depth strategy, then you're going to go ahead and want to submit your work for review. You get up to 2 revisions for each work, each milestone. So you submit, B- work. I'm going to give feedback. I'm going to send it back to you. And then you can resubmit that for your final approval, right? So, outside of that, what you also get, and what I've introduced within my last kind of cohort that started this program, are twice a month office hours. So, this is kind of the only maybe group element that you might be semi used to from another program. But I also want to tell you what it isn't. So, it is exactly office hours. I want you to think back to like college days, right? If you went and a professor said, hey, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have office hours. I'm going to be in my office doing work anyways. If you have a question, come by. It is quite literally that. I am in my office doing work anyways. I'm typically responding to support tickets at that time. I'm going to hop on Zoom for 30 minutes. You can come in if you have a question. You can leave. You cannot come in and you're not missing anything. These calls are not recorded. They're quite literally just come on if you need to screen share, if you have a quick question, if you want to verbally talk something out, that is your time to do that. And then we get off after 30 minutes and we're done. That's it. So those happen twice a month. And those have been really impactful for people who are verbal processors and want to talk back and forth and, want that quick clarity before they can confidently move forward to the next step. So those are really helpful. So that is the support that is inside of Sold Out Service. And that happens, you get access to that immediately, and you get access to that throughout the entire year. Now, in addition to that, another layer of support is that at specific pieces inside the work, right? There are 2 particular instances, at least for now, that really lead toward needing a verbal processing kind of clarity session with me. And so there are 2 points throughout the program that when you get to that and you submit this piece of work, you are able to schedule a 30-minute one-on-one with me. So you get 2 one-on-ones, an hour of my time, just you and I, but you can also unlock some of that one-on-one attention if you make time to come to office hours if you have a question. Because like I said, since those are open door, we have people who hop on, ask their question and leave. And so if you show up in that 30-minute window, I might be in my office by myself and you get my undivided attention, right? So definitely use the support as needed and plug it in where it makes sense, right? So aside from support, and I hope that you can see that is a truly what done with you is meant to be structured as. Group programs where the only done with you element is the person showing up to a group coaching call once a month. I think that those fall under a different category, and I want you to understand that that's not what this is. Now, it is important that you actually use the support ticketing system, and it's important that you submit your work, and it's important if you're stuck that you come to office hours and get unstuck. There is definitely autonomy that is required here in order for you to be able to see the results. But if you show up, and you ask the questions and you implement, even if it's messy and not perfect, then you are absolutely going to see results. Okay. And some of those really cool results that happen right away, because a lot of people ask me, okay, well, what can I expect to see within the first 30 days? And we're going to assume that this means that you're doing the work, right? We can't assume that you're going to get a result if you log in and never do anything. Okay. So we're going to assume that you're actually doing stuff. Within the first, after you get through housekeeping module, within that first pillar, which is after you've submitted the offer that you're actually productizing, you're going to work on your authority anchor. So pretty quickly, within the first 4 weeks, you're deciding and committing to the container in which that you're going to be focusing on inside of sold out services, and you're actually going to be productizing. While you can absolutely apply the productization frameworks to other containers, I really want you to focus on one thing during our time together, because I want to make sure that we get something complete from start to finish and are able then to track and tweak and refine that, because you have an entire year of working with me, right? If we're doing a little bit of productization across 3 or 4 or 5 offers, you are not going to see the biggest result opportunity. So I want to make sure that we stay focused. So within the first 4 weeks, you're able to get onboarded. You're letting me know this is the container that I'm actually going to be productizing. Then we get to build your authority anchor around that. And so your authority anchor, again, you're going to hear more about it in a couple days at the webinar. But the quick and dirty of it is it's kind of an I help statement, but amplified times 10, because it isn't just an I help these people solve this problem. It's not that. It's designed very intentionally to speak to your level 10 clients, which we will figure out inside of SOS together, highlighting what you do from a results and outcome focused angle so that we can talk to those level 10 clients who want this desired outcome and result, right? So we can begin to create the predictability of what your service provides. Plus the unique way that you show up and do that work, right? For some of you, it's going to be, let's focus on time and urgency and speed. For some of you, it's going to be revenue based. For some of you, it's going to be, hey, we do all of this without having to do these undesirable things over here, right? It's similar to how a version of my authority anchor is helping one-on-one service providers scale without creating a low price digital offer, without having to grow a huge team, without having to go viral on social media, right? So I know that I can plug those in depending on the mood that I'm in, the angle that I'm talking about, the room that I'm in, and you're going to have something similar. This isn't just creating one I help statement and it's perfect forever. This is just our springboard of what are we going to focus on and what do we think that is going to land amazingly for our level 10 clients, and what can we commit to using within just the next couple of weeks. We can tweak it, and we're absolutely going to tweak and refine it throughout our year together. But what is the thing that we can start with right now? Again, it's the domino effect, because here's an example, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a teaser, but this is what we're going to be talking about in further depth in a couple of days. If my authority anchor says I help one-on-one service providers scale without creating a low price digital offer, right? Part of the angle and the piece that that does is it also gives me a lot of content ideas, right? So therefore, then I can start creating content around being the antithesis to creating low price digital offers. I can start to showcase the math of what it takes to reach revenue goals with low priced offers versus services. I can talk about how conversion rates are different between low priced offers and mid to high ticket services. I can talk about the desires of folks who are wanting a done for you service or done with you service in comparison to someone who wants to DIY it, and how that impacts your marketing and your messaging and who you're talking to and how often you need to show up and what's required for you to market a business that is offering either product. I can talk about how, in my own experience, I ended up creating an entirely separate business when I left services and I started launching and creating lower price to mid ticket price digital offers, and what that meant for my COGS, my overall expenses in my company, my marketing budget, the growth requirement for my list, all of it, and how that impacted that. And that then leads to my level 10 client saying, oh my gosh, I've done those things. I've struggled with those things, or I want that revenue goal, but I don't want to have to do those things to get it. All of a sudden, now this is opening up a conversation, right? But what I'm testing is, does this angle attract the level 10 clients who are going to invest in my services, that I'm going to like working with, that they're going to get the great results that I know that they can get, that I want them to get, that they want to get? And was that the right angle? And so I might test that angle for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And then I'm going to say, okay, I help one-on-one service providers scale without growing a huge team. Now, what does that look like? That creates all of a sudden a completely new pillar of content for me to start to use, right? I can also start to say, not just scale or increase your revenue, but I can talk about angles of increasing your capacity. And how does that land with service providers? I can talk about how I help you increase your profit per client. And how does that land with level 10 people? So, do you see how the structure of the authority anchor stays the same, but the angle might change? And that impacts our content. It impacts the type of level 10 clients that we're working with. It impacts the results that we're ultimately measuring. Because again, for example, if my angle is I help you scale without creating low price digital products, then that impacts what I'm also asking in my onboarding form, right? I'm going to say, how many offers do you currently have available right now? And what are their price points? Are they done with you, done for you, digital, DIY? And I'm going to get a full scope of your current offer ecosystem and your offer suite. And I'm going to say, on average, how many sales are you getting in each of those containers on a monthly basis? On average, what is the average client value for each of those containers on a monthly basis? And that's data that's going to be important to me, because if I have a hypothesis that I can help you scale your service business without digital offers, and say, for example, you've already tested creating a digital offer and launching it, then I want to make sure that I'm tracking what are those sales and what are those numbers. So every month or every quarter, when we do a check-in on those numbers, I'm going to ask you, what's your current monthly revenue? What's your current average client value? How many clients are you working with? How many offers do you have? What are the price points? And I'm going to start to then notice trends over time as we're working, because what you're most likely going to do is eliminate some of those offers. Your ACV is going to increase. The amount of clients, sales that you have is going to decrease, but the amount of clients that you're working with inside of your productized container is going to increase because your capacity has actually increased, right? So all of those things are going to matter if that's the angle that I'm after. And it's going to be different if it's team, it's going to be different, right? So again, I'm going to go in way more depth in the webinar in a couple days about that and that structure and why it's important. But all of that to say is that's the work we do within the first 4 weeks. So what happens when you have your authority anchor? What happens when you're testing that positioning? Well, you start to get the attention of your level 10 clients. They start filling out your intake form or booking a discovery call or a sales call, depending on your structure. And then they start converting faster. I have a perfect example of a client who's inside. She is a web designer. And in our work together, we were able to identify, okay, this is the productized service that you're going to be going, and building inside of our time together. We also talk about pricing refinement. So we ended up increasing the price of that service by $1,000. Okay. We did the math. Here's the math. Here's how many leads you need. Here's how many clients you need on a monthly basis in order to reach your revenue goals. And it's not a lot. All right. So she said, cool. Well, she also unlocked further along inside SOS. There's a 15-minute clarity call method and a sales call discovery or a sales call formula, a high converting sales call formula. And she ultimately combined both of those because she didn't want to do a discovery call and a sales call. She actually doesn't have the time and the capacity to be able to do both. And so we talked through in a support ticket how she could merge those, right? How you could still use the same strategies, but merge them into one call. All right. And so she did. She identified her authority anchor and she started showing up online and in networking spaces and within warm referrals, right? And using her authority anchor when she was talking about her service and how she could help people. And it helped her ask better questions inside of those discovery calls or intake calls because she knew this is the angle that I'm testing right now. So these are the questions I need to be asking. And ultimately, she booked a sales call. She used the methods that are in that high converting sales call formula, really relied on that authority anchor, and she closed that client in 7 hours. Which she said when she filled out her form about her results had never happened before. This has never happened before. So now we're getting same day results because we have our authority anchor and our positioning right? And we're using sales call strategies that work, we're having same day results. So that's just one example of what could happen for you inside of Sold Out Services when we nail down those pieces. Okay. So what are some other things that you are going to be unlocking and installing inside SOS? Because I've said there are 7 pillars of productization. And so we talked about the authority anchor, right? Once we define what that is and your positioning in the actual container that we're productizing, now we need to build out the scope and the assets. Again, you've already offered this service, right? And you already know here are all of the things that I have historically provided clients who go through this container. Well, we're going to do an audit. And now that we have our results and our outcome really forward because of our authority anchor, we're going to go and look through that scope and the assets. And we're going to say, does this thing, or like truly redline each item, does this thing, is it required for your client to get the result? Yes, no, that's it. Yes or no. And for all of the ones that are no, we're going to eliminate them from your scope. We don't need them. We're going to remove them from your website language, from your proposals, whatever, right? We're going to remove it. It's not needed. For the things that are needed, that now gives us guidance to move into the next phase of understanding, okay, these are the things that need to stay. How can we productize them so that the founder, you, doesn't need to be in the weeds for the things that your time doesn't actually matter and doesn't impact? I want you to stay in the strategy, in the advising, in the creative direction, right? In the designing, if that's the piece that actually makes the difference, right? But what I don't need you doing is crafting a custom proposal every time and sending meeting note reminders or crafting the agenda or getting revisions from your clients faster, right? What we don't need is to manually and custom onboard every client and have meetings that could have been an email. That's where we start to do our like very first front pass of, okay, what's the tech that can support us in order to provide this result? Okay, I had a client who came on and she was sending a proposal, a custom proposal for every single client. And I said, okay, great. Where are we making this proposal and like what tool are you using? And she's making her proposal custom in Canva every single time. And it takes her 2 to 3 hours to get that proposal buttoned up, downloaded, and sent. Inside of SOS, there is a proposal template that I still use to this day, a authority forward proposal bot that you can interact with. You can upload your client replay notes from your discovery call and your sales call and any personal notes you've taken. And your product has offered the scope, the assets, the deliverables, the timeline, etc. And it will give you a proposal that you can then copy and paste inside of that template and send. My proposal time process now, once I end that sales call, I can send that email within 7 minutes. 7 minutes. So we're going to remove the overthinking and the bespokeness and the customization where it doesn't matter. You might think it matters and it doesn't. It doesn't. Imagine, what if you spend right now an hour to do that whole process, like go through the notes, craft the offer, make sure it's priced right, make sure like, okay, well, she said she needed this, so now I need to add this particular line item in this scope. Okay, but because I added that, does that mean that it's priced right? So I'm going to go now look at my formula and make sure that the capacity and my hours, because you're still technically probably billing by hours, even though you're not saying that you are, you're factoring that into your price. Okay, so now what does the proposal need to look like? I want to brand it to this client. And so now I need to pull in these photos or these personal pieces of information and rewrite the intro and make sure it ties to this. And okay, well, I'm increasing the price. And so I really want to make sure that I have enough support here. So I'm going to add the access that they have to me over here, or how many revisions they get over there. And I would be surprised if you're customizing to that depth, that if you can even get all that done in an hour. But we're going to assume it's an hour, right? If you were able to take what used to take an hour and it now takes you 10 minutes, right? What can you use 50 minutes on in your business that's going to actually improve the result of your client? How could that 50 minutes be better spent to support your client in getting a better result, to support your client in getting clarity, understanding, or implement, right? It's going to be different for all of you. But don't you think that your time in 50 minutes could be spent way the heck a lot better than it is gathering notes and making a perfect proposal? I think so. So those are the areas times 1,000 where your time is leaking across your business and the relationship with your leads and your prospects and your clients, right? And I want to identify all of them. So we go through an exercise together inside a Google Doc where you outline every single touch point, every single thing that you do when a client goes from a prospect to a lead to a client and then offboards, when a person goes through those journeys, okay? And then again, we categorize. Is this something we can automate, delegate, outsource, keep, refine, right? Productize. And we go and score all of them. And then we immediately take action on the things that we can delegate, outsource, or delete. And then we build the systems needed for productization. And then the things that are left for you to own, we continue to keep an eye on them and do a time audit on, all right, these are the things that you said were most important. I want you to be diligent in really assessing whether that thing is helping you lead to the result for your client. If it's not, we need to eliminate it or we need to refine it and get you your time out of it. So we do that deep, deep, deep audit and we strategize together of what those systems could look like, what the tech that's needed in order to support you there. And this is where you implement yourself, but I design the strategy for you and we talk through it together. This is one of the times where you unlock one of your 30-minute calls with me because, we're in the weeds, right? This is a pretty beefy part of the program. Now, other pillars that we install are everything from understanding your level 10 client and reactivating past clients, reintroducing your productized offer to your current clients. So, do we need to change their current scope and their price? How do we say that? What do we communicate with them? Can we reintroduce past leads or past prospects and past clients and bring them back into your ecosystem and pay you? This is what I call hidden revenue. Can we find the hidden revenue that's sitting in your business right now just so we can create some cash flow and some runway? And then we move into one of my favorites, which is visibility. And it's reintroducing your productized offer to not just your current network, but beyond. So, how do we tell past referral partners, what are you doing these days and how can they introduce you? And you're going to get exact scripts on how to do that. And then also, how can we start now increasing our visibility online on platforms that you care about, that feel low lift and fun for you, right? So, what happens at this point is that you've come to me and you maybe never wanted to show up on Threads or Instagram, or maybe you've always wanted to create a podcast, but you never had the time to do it. So, we do the work first of actually productizing your container and buying back your time. And my goal for you is to buy back 5 to 15 hours of founder time per week because of the productizations that we implemented and installed in your business, in your container, in your messaging, in your communication, in your tech, in all of it. So that then you get to breathe a little bit and you say, okay, I have 5 to 15 hours, right? It varies for everyone. What do I do with that time? And more often than not, because of the type of business owners that we are, because of the goals that we have, we are now excited about getting to spend that time on something else in our business. And I'm not saying you have to at all. If you've gotten to the point and you bought that time back and you're like, great, I'm going to go nap, do that. We all get to decide where we spend, what we do with that extra time. But more often than not, the service providers I'm working with inside of Sold Out Services are like, heck yeah, I never thought I would have the time, the energy, or to care about being visible now, and I want to. And what does that look like? And so we start installing the visibility framework of your productized offer and how are we getting in front of new people. And because typically, like, we've got to move past just relying on referrals at this point. And so that means we need to be visible, right? So we talk about what that looks like. We talk about content that's created and shared and what platforms you're going to show up on. And then we install our final pillar, which is our lead pipeline tracker. Service providers, for some reason, just aren't great at tracking leads. We're really great when someone becomes a client. What phase are they at? Are they moving along forward? Okay, they're in onboarding and now they're in asset delivery and now they're offboarded or whatever it might be. But we don't do that for leads at all. And so I want to change that for everyone. And so you'll unlock a template. It's in Airtable where we track those leads. We track the proposal value. We do some forecasting, and it hopefully is enabling you to set up a really good maintenance system on how you can keep that up moving forward. And all of that happens over the course of a year. Most sold out service clients are doing the deep work within their first 90 days. And then we're testing and refining, and we're plugging in a little bit of the other pillars as we go along. Within the first 6 to 7 months, you have everything installed, but we are testing and refining. So we might go back to authority anchor, and then we might take more out of the scope, and we might productize another layer, right? All of that's fine. That is the journey of this. It's never perfect. I'm constantly refining sold out services and my other containers for my consulting clients. How can I make this a better experience for my client, get them better results, and it take me less time to do it, right? That's just part of this journey. And so we do that over the course of a year. And it's really cool because I love data, and I'm teaching so many service providers, not just to love data, but what data to look at. And then when we look at that data, what does it mean? And what do we need to be doing about it? All of that happens inside sold out services together in this asynchronous done with you container. And it's one of my favorite places to be. It's the best work I've done in my career. And if you are at the stage being a service provider and you're at ceiling season, you're working with incredible clients, you provide incredible results, even if it's across the board, even if it's a lot of different results, and you wear a lot of hats, and you're thinking, I want to hit the next revenue level and I cannot see a pathway forward. I want to introduce productization to that journey. And I want to talk to you about what would that look like if we were to go all in on your authority and the outcomes you provide and really refine a signature service that's super productized so that you can increase your capacity and increase your impact. That is the work we do inside Sold Out Services. And I would love to partner with you to figure that out together. So come to the webinar that's happening in 2 days. If you're listening to this after, if you registered, the replay is sitting in your inbox. Okay. If not, you can head to soldoutservices.com and learn more information about what it's like working together and what it's like to dig in. If you're enrolling in between March 12th and March 19th, you're going to unlock that bonus that you're going to hear about in a couple of days. If it is after that, no worries. Sold Out Services is still open for you, and I would still love to welcome you inside. So head to soldoutservices.com. You can also asynchronously ask me a question on the sales page at soldoutservices.com/enroll. And we can chat through audio, video, text, and it'll ping me and I'll respond to you, and then you can respond to me, and we can go back and forth. It's really easy. Can't wait to hear from you. I hope to see you inside. I hope to see you at the webinar in a couple days, and we'll chat later. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sell the Damn Service. I'm really honored that you spent however many minutes you just did with me. Now, if you could go do me a very quick favor and be sure to like, subscribe, leave a rating and a review for this podcast over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or, pick your favorite platform. I'm not going to be that choosy. It truly means the world to me. It's how little tiny shows that are like mine, that are self-funded and, being edited in between dinner time and school pickup, it helps us get seen. It's free for you to do and takes just a couple of minutes. And I would love you forever if I could send you an edible arrangement as a big thank you. I would. So instead, consider this giant thank you directed just at you for going to do that, and share this episode or this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it. I love ranting and raving about service-based business strategies. And, I think more people should listen to this show, honestly. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really, really, really am grateful that you're here, and we will chat very soon.